Talk about the first round, Dan. And obviously, the first round of these drafts is very important. You want to nail your first round pick, especially in these category leagues, because the first round kind of determines how the rest of your draft is going to go. This is essentially the building block and the framework for how you're going to build your team. If you're going to like fade any categories, if you're going to build on a certain category, or if you're just going to have a pretty good overall team. So, my man, Dan Titus, bro, talk to me, man. How you been living? How was this offseason for you?
Oh, all season's been great, man. And we're only like 12 days away from actual hoops. So, like, I couldn't be more hyped, man. Doing a lot of content, been watching a lot of games, reading a lot of box scores, listening to the beat. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is where this all kind of comes together. So, if you get the #1 pick, come on. Which way are we going? We got to go Wemby, right?
Gotta go Wemby, bro. I think the #1 pick is probably one of like the biggest things, right? Because you have to take either the risk of Wemby or you go one of the floors and maybe Jokic, maybe you're looking like, Shea, I don't know who else you're looking at. But Wemby to me seems like the guy. Like when you talk about potential ceiling here, there is no ceiling. No ceilings, like Wayne said, right? Like there's literally no ceilings. And the defensive stats, especially in category leagues, you're talking about a guy that's going to average 3 blocks a game at least. I mean, he's just it completely dominates in one category and gives you such a good floor in the others.
So the thing about Wembanyama and why I like him as the #1 pick is because you want to play fantasy basketball and all fantasy sports for upside, right? And it's also fun. Let's keep that in perspective, right? When you go to your box score and you want to look at your fantasy team, you want to see the most craziest stats that have ever been produced. And that's what you're going to look like when you see Victor Wembanyama, right? This man he was like what, 1 rebound and 2 assists shy of a quadruple double. Man. Only Hakeem Olajuwon has done that. If you look at his numbers, he had the 2nd most fantasy points in the modern era for a rookie, only behind David Robinson. And for you young heads that don't know who David Robinson, the Admiral, was, this man was like, if he played in the NBA today, it would be like Wemby, only Wemby can shoot threes too. This guy averaged like 4 stocks a game. So if we're talking about a guy that can get steals, over 3.5 blocks a game, he's going to be a 20-10 guy. He's already been the odds-on favorite for most improved player. I don't even know how he even qualifies for that in his 2nd season. But Victor Wembanyama, to me, is like, he's a cheat code. He's a cheat code for fantasy. So if you have an opportunity to draft a cheat code, do it. And that's not a knock on Jokic, man. Like Jokic has been a top 3 player over the last 4 or 5 seasons in fantasy basketball. So it's really a win-win situation. But when you're talking about winning a league, you got to go for this upside. And Wemby pretty much covers every base in fantasy. Turnovers might, hamper him a little bit, but who cares about turnovers? And his field goal percentage might be a little bit light on some nights. But if you're looking in totality, this man's going to help you in 7 of 9 categories.
It's funny because you talk about like cheat code, and Jokic is a fucking cheat code. Like he's a cheat code at center, and we get even more of a cheat code in Wembanyama, which is crazy. Like you're talking about, like Jokic averages damn near a triple-double at center, right? So when you get that kind of assist and production from a unique spot, I always talk about this, like the outliers, they kind of lead the teams, right? Like I feel like if you can get assist at center, you have an advantage. You get rebounds at the point guard position, you have the advantage. And I think Wemby just provides like these stocks, these crazy amount of stocks that like kind of change how you address these category positions. Because, there used to be, I don't know, you obviously remember, but if you're watching, maybe you don't remember, Hassan Whiteside had this stretch for the Miami Heat in the second half of the year where he was averaging like 4 blocks a game. And literally, you didn't have to have a single block on your team because he was having, 30 blocks in a week, 40 blocks in a week at time. And you were like, that's the only player you need. And you can address every other position now without having to go with blocks, every other category. Wemby's going to be the same way. You get one more player who averages a block or 2, you're pretty much covered. So I just think the statistical advantage that he provides is even better than like a Jokic who, Dan, I really like Jokic at the #1 spot. Yeah. And I feel like he provides a lot assist-wise and steal-wise for a big. It's just crazy to see what we're going to get out of Wemby this year. I do think, though, Jokic is safer. He's safer right now than Wemby is. I think injury risk-wise.
Jokic has the highest floor in the game. And I say that because if you just go into, look at the advanced stats, look at the actual box scores, this man he doesn't miss games very frequently. And which is a positive for Wembanyama that he played over 70 games, that he played 70 games in his rookie season. But if you look at Jokic, I mean, you can build anything. You can build a team around him because he doesn't do anything bad. The only thing he doesn't do is block shots. But steals, he's right there. Gets over steal a game. He's going to average a triple-double. He has 114 triple-doubles since 2019. Like, this man is a stat stuffing machine. So you can't really go wrong. And to be honest, I think you're actually probably getting the best valued pick at number 2 if someone takes Wemby, right? You're going to get Jokic as the number 2 when this guy is a perennial finishes top 3. Like, it's just so crazy how good the center position is in fantasy. And we can talk about a couple other players, because I think there's a couple of situations where I think there's a couple of centers that could probably compete for a top 3 position just because of their situation and the way that the kind of landscape is shaping out. But centers are more valuable than ever in fantasy basketball. And it speaks to it because the first 2 picks are literally centers.
It's like, well, we got like 5-6 players that are center eligible in the top 12. And it's like, normally, you talked about this last year. You kind of like fade the center position a little bit, and you go for the point guards. You go for the guys that can get you assists. Assists to me has always been one of those categories, Dan, that like, if you get that, it feels like you have an edge on everybody else, because assists are like, you can't pick that up late in the year.
They're so constant.
You pick up threes. You can't always pick up assists, though.
The top guards in fantasy basketball are also concentrated at the top, 3-4 rounds, right? So that's why, like, my draft strategy has always been go get guards early, second, third round. But like, when you have the opportunity to pair them with a Wembanyama, a Jokic, a Giannis, an Embiid, an Anthony Davis, etc., you're just getting so much more statistical broadening of your like categories when you can like pair them with those guys. And I think you made a great point. It was like, you got to get those players that have the upside in other positional areas where they don't normally get those stats. So Wembanyama is probably going to average like 5 assists this year. That's like Şengün, Sabonis, Jokic. There's not that many centers you can get 5 assists from. So anytime you can get a player that can contribute in an area where, is a strength, usually a deficient area of another type of position, you got to do it.
What about Shea or like Luka, right? Like, we obviously talked about the centers being at the top here, but like, is that even a consideration for you at number 1? Because when you talk number 1, like, we know the outlier that Wemby is, we know the outlier that Jokic is, but like, Luka is an outlier himself. He's probably going to lead the leading scoring again. Damn near probably average a triple-double this year or be close to it. And then same thing goes with Shea. It's like he's one of the more consistent players. It's elite in steals. Neither of those guys is a threat to like the number 1 spot over Jokic or Wemby for you right now?
No. I think Luka could probably be a close – he's in that next tier, right? Like, I think I would take – if my draft board was coming up to me, it would be Wemby, Jokic, then Luka. The one thing about Luka that I think is actually looking up for him this year is that they got better perimeter shooting. That could equate to more potential assists. Maybe it's a little bit less load on him, offensively. But either way, this dude's going to be getting 30%, highest usage rate in the league, damn near. But when you have a spot-up shooter like Klay Thompson, you bring in Najee Marshall, you bring in Quentin Grimes on top of PJ Washington, man, like, Dallas Mavericks are going to be a really good basketball team. And Luka's going to put up – he was already efficient last year. So if he can continue that efficiency, that was always the knock on him. And that boost and assist with that perimeter shooting around him is only going to be a good thing. I do have concerns about SGA, though, because they got better. They got a lot better. I mean, defensively, this team is going to be a nightmare, but they added in when they got rid of Josh Giddey, they brought in Alex Caruso, definitely a defensive-minded guy. But I think Jalen Williams is going to take that next step and evolve from being a really good player to being an all-star caliber, maybe even all-NBA type of talent. So I think his usage is actually going to go down a little bit. Chet Holmgren's going to grow and get more mature in his role, playing a little bit of 4 now with Isaiah Hartenstein there. This Oklahoma City team is for real. And I think that they're going to be spreading their usage among, their starting cast. And that might downgrade Shea just a little bit to what we've seen in the past, where he's been an MVP caliber player. And I think the NBA GMs voted him as the most likely to be MVP this year. But I would take Luka over him.
Well, he's a dog, and that whole team full of dogs. And so we know they be barking, especially in playoff pictures. But I feel like there's the novelty, right, factor of the triple-double with Luka, with Shea kind of potentially being, I know Shea's a little bit further away from the triple-double than Luka is, but there's that novelty factor of like they average 30 points. And in category leagues, that's the one thing I'll say about these two players is I think some of their pull up to the top of this number 1, number 2 spot is due to the fact that they go so high in points league. So I kind of stay away from players like Luka who are a drag in like free throw percentage and turnovers. And in the second half, Luka was much better shooting the free throws. So hopefully we get to see that stick. But I kind of stay away from players that don't shoot free throws well, or maybe they're averaging around 4 turnovers. Unless you're Wemby. Wemby gets the pass, bro. He gets the pass.